Care to chat? Hello and welcome to this episode of the Northern Ireland Social Care Council's popular podcast, Care to Chat. I'm Wendy Austin and it's my great pleasure to host these podcasts, hearing the stories of social care workers and social workers and their clients, and hearing too about the many different aspects of the work itself, from domiciliary care to complex areas like criminal justice. And that's what we're talking about today, the role of the social worker in the justice system. With me, Ashley Galloway, who's a floating support social worker with criminal justice organisation Extern, and Robyn McVeigh, a probation officer with the Probation Board of Northern Ireland. Great to have you both here. Thanks very much for coming along. Robyn, tell us a bit about your organisation, the Probation Board, and what you do.
So probation works to protect the public and reduce reoffending by supervising people who have offended in the community while also overseeing their rehabilitation and resettlement. It can be difficult to articulate to the public who don't understand what probation do, and the easiest way to explain that is that we support people to change their lives. We aim to provide that in a very individualised, trauma-informed way. It can be difficult for every individual who walks through the door because we're all different and there's no one-size-fits-all for anybody that we engage with. And probation would engage with individuals throughout the criminal justice system, starting from when they are having their pre-sentence report completed, like assisting the courts with assisting their decision making, to whenever if an individual is in custody, we would also have an involvement there. That's where my particular role would be within the organisation. And then we also have the community element where if an individual receives a disposal that is not prison-based, they might receive a probation order or an enhanced combination order where they have that intensive support with probation depending on the level of risk that is assessed. That support is kind of a two-pronged approach where we are risk management to try and ensure that that individual doesn't reoffend or harm the public in any way, which, as I'm sure everybody understands, can be very difficult because we can provide the tools and give the advice, but it's that individual's decision making. And the other approach we take then is ensuring that that individual has the tools to change their mindset, to be able to address their problems in a more positive approach and to try and remove themselves from that circle of offending behaviours.
So it's a really crucial role that you play, and we'll talk more about some of the aspects that you mentioned there, like, for instance, the trauma-informed practice and so on. But let me just bring Ashley in. And Ashley, tell us a bit about Extern and what you do through it.
I'm a social worker working for Extern organisation. It is a social justice charity and it's been operating since 1978. The charity supports over 20,000 children, young people and individuals and their family across the island of Ireland. We work with people who are homeless or facing homelessness, those dealing with mental health issues, people experiencing addiction and gambling, support refugees and the travelling community and people living with offending backgrounds.
So that last bit is maybe the part that taps into the criminal justice system, really, which is what we're focusing on today, isn't it? So, and you're a floating support social worker with Extern. Now, where does the floating come in?
Well, I'm a social worker with Extern's criminal justice floating support. So we are community based and we are fieldwork social workers. We would be allocated approximately about 16 service users and we would meet them then out in the community and help support them to remain in the community.
16's quite a lot, isn't it? So what sort of support can you provide for them? I mean, what is there a typical day or week as regards the people you're dealing with and the support that you can offer?
Yeah, the team provides support to medium to high risk offenders, often with multiple and complex needs. Our role is to support individuals to make the transition from prison to the community and to obtain suitable accommodation and maintain their tenancies. We also support individuals to maintain a positive mental health, counter social isolation and avoid reoffending. Through working with these individuals, you have the opportunity to build positive working relationships, and that is the most important, is building that rapport with the client and engage in the social work process, such as from the initial assessment to planning, intervening, reviewing and interagency work.
So is that where the social work training really comes into play, the kind of process-driven side of it, where you have a way of going about things, if I could put it like that?
Yeah, very much so. We have known as the social work process, and that's from the initial contact where you gather the information, then you start building rapport with your service user, and you carry out assessments and develop holistic plans in partnership with your service user.
Do you think, Robyn, that there's an understanding of social work in the justice system? I mean, I think there are a lot of people who are surprised, perhaps, to discover that, that probation officers are social workers. How would you describe it to someone who doesn't know what it is?
I was one of those people. I didn't know that to be a probation officer you had to be a qualified social worker. Whenever, I remember my first tutorial in university, and one of my friends was like, "Oh, I'm doing this to be a probation officer," and that was so alien to me, because for me social workers are social care, and we deal with protecting children and safeguarding vulnerable adults. So to explain what a probation officer does, what a social worker in probation does, we would work alongside the courts. As I said, the courts would request pre-sentence reports, and that would involve a probation officer meeting with the individual and starting from the bottom, finding out about their background, where they came from, what made them who they are. So looking at family life, how they grew up, schooling, work, all of those things that develop you as an adult. And then we look at the offending side of things. So the first thing we do is look at them as a person, not the offences that they are supposed to have been committed. And from that then we develop an assessment that goes off to the courts, and they make their decision. From that then, whenever we have individuals in the community that are supervised by probation, just as Ashley was saying, we are building that rapport. We are supervising them. Depending on their level of risk, will determine how often they will engage with probation. And those supervisions are looking at, what is your housing like? Is that stable? What is your friendship circle like? What is your family life like? What are all the things going on in your life? And building that rapport so that individuals can come in and say, look, I'm really struggling and I need help with this. And we are there to listen and to put that support in and help them manage how they manage that. And then in the prison setting, so if an individual is sentenced to some time in custody, that's where I come in. So there are different types of sentences, and I think that can also be misconstrued by the public. They don't really understand how sentences work, and so if an individual is sentenced to a determinate custodial sentence, that would be kind of your straightforward, you're going to come in, you're going to do your time, and you're going to go out. Probation have an involvement with that, so we would work with that individual to prepare them for that release. So again, we are looking at that pre-sentence report and saying, okay, this is what you've done with my colleague. We're going to look at this, and for the next 6 months, we're going to work out a bit of a case plan to see what you need, so that whenever you're leaving prison, you are prepared, or somewhat prepared. And that is then handed over to the community supervisor then to take that case plan on. And you're continuing to look at all those factors that are going to increase that individual's risk, but ensuring that we are supportive, so holding them accountable, but also being supportive and saying that we believe that you have the potential to make that change. And then the other element of probation is we also work very closely with victims. So obviously there are victims to crimes, and it's very important that they are receiving the right level of support alongside that. So we have a victims unit who will be the go-between if a victim has registered with them in terms of licence conditions. So the prison probation officers would also have a role playing in terms of what that individual's licence is going to be like when they're in the community. So we were, through that contact we've had, we're looking at, okay, what do we need to risk manage that person? So taking away from the supportive side, where does the risk element come in? What are the licence conditions going to be if you have someone who has, for example, committed an offence that was fuelled by the misuse of alcohol or substances? We would then be looking at, okay, well, this is a factor. Perhaps then we would submit you for alcohol and drug testing, and if you were in the community then, and subject to that, if that is continual, we would say, okay, there's still a continuing problem there, let's manage this. If it's unmanageable, then that probation then step in again and say, okay, we need to do something about this. It's no longer safe to manage that individual in the community, and then they would be recalled to prison.
It's a big responsibility, isn't it?
It's huge.
I mean, does that weigh on you?
Yeah, it does. It weighs to an extent, and I suppose you kind of just get used to it because you understand how important that role is, not just for your job in working with that individual, but also that contact didn't really go so well today, but you have such a supportive team around you and the management, and there are always people available to sound off, to say, look, this isn't really, I'm really struggling with this, or I don't really know how to manage this, or I'm really concerned about this particular individual. Can you guide me? And there's always people there, people that have had loads of experience, or people who have just come in that are maybe looking at things from a different perspective that I might look at them from. So though it weighs, there are ways to manage it.
That's very interesting, because it's something actually that we've heard in a number of these podcasts about both the obvious and the less obvious support structures, if I could put it like that. And, Ashley, you've talked about how you work in a team. Is that one of the supports that works for you when you're having, you feel you had a bad day, or you're concerned about something?
Yeah, very much so. We talk about, our team being very much a safe space for us to, offload, to share. That we have a wide range of experienced staff, and we can, bounce ideas off. We have team meetings. We, have informal, formal reflective supervision where we can, speak with our manager should, we have concerns or challenges. We talk about self-care a lot in social work as well. Taking time out, being self-aware, checking in with yourself, making sure, that you're managing okay, and that, you're not experiencing, stress, or they call it, I think now, compassion fatigue, so yeah, huge. The team and who we work with, are definitely, what helps us through the challenging times, but it's also very rewarding as well. I've been with Extern, hard to believe, 22 years, and throughout my path I've worked in probation hostels and then floating support, and it's a real privilege to be part of that journey with people when you have an individual that is in and out of custody, the revolving door, they haven't been in permanent accommodation for several years, and you see with your support that they're implementing positive changes, they're now in permanent, secure accommodation in their home, and they've been integrated in the community and are successfully managing their tenancy. So that makes it all very worthwhile.
And that's really good to hear. And how aware are you of the difference that a social worker, probation officer, whatever, floating support worker, the difference that you can make, not just to the life maybe of the person that you're actually dealing with face to face, but with their circle as well, the rest of the people in their lives.
Yeah, no, it's huge. That this affects the family network, and I would have a lot of cases that I would do some family work and liaise with the family and try and build and restore relationships. A lot of them have been socially isolated. We work with the most vulnerable and marginalised individuals in society. They're due to their offending behaviour, their family maybe has walked away and is not providing support. Where we're there, then we can start that building of relationships and working very closely with the family.
What would you say, Robyn, to people who think that probation officers can be a bit of a soft touch? It's the kind of thing you hear, isn't it? And that didn't work very well, or you're far too soft on these people. They are offenders after all.
I think it depends who you're speaking to. So, if you speak to the offenders themselves, it's very much the opposite. It's you're out to get me. You're out to get me to go to prison. There's a change, and it's something that I would promote quite a lot. Is I don't want you here. I enjoy working with you, and I hope that this works. But I don't want to see you come back. That's not what my job is. My job is to support you to remove yourself from the criminal justice system. And when you speak to families, like doing our risk assessments, and a lot of that would involve speaking with family, particularly if we have individuals who are on the way out of custody or involved in the pre-release testing programme, where they're getting a specified amount of time out of prison. A lot of work goes into speaking to family, and they do raise their concerns, and they say, well, how can you assure me that this isn't going to happen, or how can I assure you that's not? And the bottom line is, I can't assure anything, but all I can tell you is that we're there to support you, and we provide contact details, and we are very open that if they wish to speak to us, pick up the phone like we are. So we are there to provide that support to them. So though we're prison based, and that's me personally, obviously we have the community team who also are very open to speaking with family and reassurance. But it can be difficult to say, we're not soft touches. We have to have that balance. We can't be the hard line. You can't do this, you can't do that, because people need to be given space to make their own decisions. They need that autonomy. Do
you feel appreciated? I mean, I remember interviewing on one occasion, I think actually I did a conference with a guy who had been in prison for murder in GB, and his whole kind of presentation was about the inspirational social worker that did actually, as far as he was concerned, turn his life around. Is that what you have in mind always? I mean, I know it's maybe kind of very sunny uplands, if you like. It's not always going to be like that, but that's what you're aiming for.
Yeah, I think that is something we all do aim for, is to put our best into every individual we come into contact with. And, it could be one person in your career, it could be multiple people in your career, but even that one person who is able to turn around and say, that probation officer really just helped that penny drop for me. To me, that is just the goal.
Ashley?
Yeah, we always, we work on hope, and we, work that we see that somebody always has the potential to change. It's like Extern's core principle is that we don't walk away, we never give up. We, see the power in second, third, fourth chances and more. So when somebody's ready and able and willing to change, then our doors are open. We don't reach out, we reach in, and we don't wait for others to reach out to us.
And every time they come back, they come back and they come into that supervision with you, and they have that look on their face that's like, oh no. And you're like, I'm really sorry that you've ended up like this, but here, sure, we'll just go again. Like, it's fine. Like, there's no, like, you have unlimited chances at this. Like, there's nobody saying you need to get right the first time, the second time, the third time. And we will be there behind you, supporting you every single time. And I think once you get that consistency, and consistency seems to be key with individuals that I work with, if you're there and you're showing up, because a lot of these guys, as Ashley said, are the most marginalised in society. They don't have a circle, they don't have support, they don't have people believing in them. And if we're that one face, or if Ashley's that one face, or just somebody within that process is just there, constant, and saying, I believe you can do this. Mm-hmm. And it just, like, you can see after a while that they do gain that confidence, and it makes such a difference in how they act and what they're doing. And you can hear in the conversations through supervision, you can hear how their self-belief and their awareness and their thinking changes, because they're starting to go, okay, well, people do get it. They get it. That, like, I have people there for me.
You recognise that moment, Ashley, do you?
Yeah, it's, having that genuine, desire to help people and to genuinely care for them, and if you portray that and build up that rapport, it's very powerful. Listening, creating a safe place for them to express themselves. They might never have had that. They might never have had somebody that gives them hope and says, you can actually do this. We can give you the tools to implement, so then that you don't need to, go through the criminal justice system and reoffend. So it's very powerful that, that relationship and just giving people hope.
And even the third, fourth time, you don't get exasperated, no?
Sometimes you can get a bit frustrated, in terms of, you don't want to see individuals come round the system, and you do, unfortunately. It is that revolving door, and, you're that passionate that you want to stop that cycle of, coming round the system. You see young people that have been so institutionalised, that prison is their safe place, and they don't know how to manage out in the community, and that's very sad. And we want to, be able to build, have their little toolkit that they're able to, manage within the community in a safe way.
Robyn, you mentioned at the start about trauma-informed practice, and there's a big focus on that currently. Tell me a bit about it and its importance in the context of the work that both of you does.
So the trauma-informed practice, nobody kind of grows up with the ambition, I'm going to be a criminal. Whenever you are deep diving into the background of how they grew up and the issues that they've faced, the childhood adversities, they've all had a really tough time of it. And to expect somebody to have that kind of tough time and just kind of go about their adult life as if nothing ever happened, that's quite naive. So when you deep dive, you see that a lot of these individuals have maybe experienced abuse, neglect, been in the care system from a very young age, experienced their own personal traumas, whether that be witnessing mum and dad having a domestic violence relationship and then going on to repeat that in later life, that they, to them that is normal and they're replicating that with their own relationships. So to then be sitting in a contact and supervising this individual and saying, okay, you're committing domestic violence. Like, what's going on there? Why is this? And then you're looking back and going, okay, well, that's what mum and dad did. So then you're finding that spot that you're going to work with in terms of, okay, this is what you see mum and dad do. This is why you think that's normal. But here is an intervention that we're going to do that is going to show you what a healthy relationship would look like and how you manage those emotions without screaming and shouting and potentially hitting and very seriously harming somebody. So your trauma-informed practice is looking at why has that individual come to do what they've done, and what interventions or what do we need to pick out of that to try and unravel and show and help them understand that that is not okay, but there is a way to be okay and you have the potential to be able to change that. You don't need to replicate that. Or if you have individuals that have experienced abuse in some form, who have been a victim, who have then gone on to commit crime, and they may not have addressed that. There's individuals that I have worked with, like I work with adult males, who have been victims of sexual abuse, which is a lot of stigma around that, particularly with males who do not want to put their hand up and say, yes, I was a victim of sexual abuse, or I was a victim of domestic violence. And it can be a lot for them to come to terms with. So it's identifying that and then identifying other support services that may be more qualified to deal with that. Individuals who have been counsellors for that kind of abuse. So it's then signposting that. And whenever they're engaging in that counselling, then we step in as the support for them to be able to feed back and be the sounding board to say how that counselling has been affecting them, or what they're getting out of it, what they're not getting out of it. So it's very important that we are working from that trauma-informed.
Ashley, I'm assuming that you work from the same kind of basis as well. I mean, it's important both for the person that you're dealing with and for the member of staff as well, isn't it?
Yeah, Extern have recently moved towards trauma-informed practice organisation. We were able to recognise that most of our individuals, have complex needs. They've experienced trauma and adverse childhood experiences. In terms of trauma-informed practice, it is a strength-based approach, and it helps us to understand and respond to the impact trauma has on an individual, and it can prevent re-trauma. I'm TCI trained, which is a therapeutic crisis intervention.
So that's different, is it?
Yes, that is part of trauma-informed practice. That's a trauma-informed practice intervention.
Right.
And it would talk about clients that have been in stress or crisis and how we manage and de-escalate that crisis in a safe environment. They would talk about pain-based behaviour, and that a lot of our clients would display that, and that would include self-harm, impulsive withdrawal. So a lot of our clients would display that. So we work within, it's called behaviour support techniques, and we would work within that, and some of them would be, prompting, hurdle help. That's all quite a lot of social work jargon, but that's how we would work.
Tell me, whenever you were doing your social work degree, is this what you saw yourself doing for 22 years?
It was a long time. I'm a social worker now, coming up to 19 years. My background would be children. I did a BTEC in early childhood studies and then went on to do a degree in early childhood studies. I'd always wanted to help people and make a difference. My route, I thought, would be in child protection, But after I completed my degree, I did the Masters in Social Work at that time, and you needed 6 months experience. So I took a year out and did some voluntary work with Bernardo's and seen a relief post with Extern in, it was one of the old probation units. So I applied for that and got a relief post and worked as a residential worker for a year until I got onto the social work course. And then as I qualified, the probation unit was moving and there was a lot more opportunities, and I took that post and I have been there ever since. So I've been with Extern 22 years.
What about you, Robyn? Is probation what you saw yourself doing when you were doing your social work studies?
So I went back to higher education whenever I think I was 25, and had started a law degree, and at the same time had started working as care in the community with elderly and disabled people. And the job satisfaction that I had from that was the first time I had ever worked in social care, and the job satisfaction was just unbelievable, knowing that you had made a real change to somebody. So that prompted me then to go and do my social work degree with the intention of becoming a care manager and assisting those that needed care packages in the community. And I got to the 3rd year of my degree. My first placement was with Extern, and then my second placement was in fostering. And then probation put out their job posting, and I was like, well, let's just apply and see. And I got it, and whenever I qualified then in July 2021, I went straight into probation and haven't looked back.
Interesting that you both ended up doing something really quite different to what you had originally intended. Just a final point that I wondered about. Professional curiosity is an interesting thing, isn't it? You used to have a colleague of mine who rather jokily talked about the eye of the trained observer, but you do need to have your wits about you sometimes, don't you? And as a part of professional social practice, social work practice, that must be very important. I mean, you're in quite a privileged position in people's homes and so on, but you do need to have a look around, really, don't you?
Yeah, that would be central to our work. As social workers, we need to explore and actively try to understand what is happening rather than making assumptions. As social workers, we're naturally interested in people and want to find out more. I think they call it respectively nosy. It's about everything that we do. We need to be brave. We need to have those really difficult conversations with people, that could be about domestic violence, abuse, addiction, mental health. We need to ask the open questions. We need to look. We need to listen. We need to check out. Being professional, curious will help us to develop a holistic view and fully assess the need and potential risks. Without that, there's a risk that there's missed opportunities, and that's very well documented in case reviews where this has resulted in death or serious abuse, where social workers haven't, been curious, haven't asked those questions and went on face value and made assumptions.
Asking the stupid question sometimes, isn't it, Robyn?
It's become an area of increasing focus for probation. As Ashley said, it has been identified as lacking in numerous cases where things have gone wrong. And it has been reflected as a learning need to improve risk assessment and risk management in various HMPP and CGINI inspections of probation practice. Professional curiosity was reflected as lacking in the McCann, Bendel and McSweeney cases, and it can be caught and taught. It is vital for safe practice. Whenever we are doing our risk assessments, we are reaching out to everybody that's in that person's life. We need to get the full picture of what is happening. If you sit down with an individual and they are telling you their version, there's multiple versions of that story, and we need to be aware of everything so that our assessments are as up to date and on point as they can be. The last thing that we want is for a serious further offence to be committed and us not understanding why that has happened. For example, in the case of an individual who has committed domestic violence, if we haven't explored those relationships, if we haven't explored who that individual is talking to, what their plans are post-custody, that can open that up for a very serious incident to happen. And if we're not aware of that, then what are we doing? That is the epitome of our role, professional curiosity. Tell us about you, tell us about your family, tell us about who that is, who is this person that we're working with, and how can we support and prevent.
It's been absolutely fascinating talking to you both. Thank you so much, Ashley Galloway, Robyn McVeigh. Thank you for being with us today and for your insight into social work in criminal justice. Thanks for listening to Care to Chat. You can catch all the episodes on the NI Social Care Council website or indeed wherever you get your podcasts. Do please rate us, subscribe and of course tell all your friends and colleagues.